I think if you look from the southwest Louisiana corridor all the way down to the New Orleans area, you're seeing a real boon of not only companies coming in, building infrastructure with billions of dollars investments, which I think is ultimately just going to make the real estate market just take off even stronger than it is now in those areas particularly. But there's areas around the northern part of the state that are doing the same. So we're very blessed here in Louisiana to have some great things coming online, some expansions that I think the real estate market is set and poised over the next 2 years to really skyrocket in the right direction, whereas we've been, kind of muddled down in this housing recession and real estate recession the last 3 or 4 years. I think Louisiana is poised and positioned to really take off into 14 and even 15. The interest rates being as low as they are and continue to stay low is a great opportunity for individuals to be able to get in and purchase the residential side of the market properties. But I think obviously on the commercial side of the properties, you're seeing the investment with the plants with Sasol in the west, the new cores and all the, not just the huge investment, but you're seeing a lot of small and medium-sized economic development projects that are taking off. And in turn, that helps your industrial and commercial sectors of the real estate market with these companies expanding and building buildings and warehouses and other types of commercial properties. The flood insurance program was created in 1968 due to the fact that the private market kind of stepped aside and stopped writing in that market. So the federal National Flood Insurance Program was created back in 1968. It's been a great program for individuals to be able to pay in for premiums to be able to obtain coverage in the case of flood to their properties, residential and commercially. Well, over the past 4 or 5 years, the program, according to FEMA, has been in the deficit. And as you know, sometimes it's been 6 months and it's been stopped. It's been stopgap extended for maybe 3 or 4 months. There was no certainty that the program would continue long term. So the Louisiana Realtors and others around the country, the stakeholders involved last year, we supported the 5-year extension in the so-called Biggert-Waters Flood Insurance Act of 2012, realizing that premiums may tick up a little bit, but certainly not to the level that we're seeing with the ramifications of actually seeing the law being implemented. There's been some unintended consequences in mainly the form of skyrocketing premiums on the residential side, particularly that consumers in no way are going to be able to afford in order to purchase flood insurance moving forward. The Louisiana Realtors has been heavily engaged with a broad national coalition that's obviously being spearheaded by Greater New Orleans, Inc. In New Orleans, of all types of stakeholders involved that are dealing, whether it's banks, realtors, title insurance companies, you name, you run the local elected officials, people in communities and cities are all very concerned about what we've seen in the implementation phase of the Biggert-Waters Act. We are seeing potential premiums where individuals may be paying $600 or $700 now to cover their home. In some cases, these premiums may be rising to $6,000, $7,000. As we all know, property insurance in certain areas, depending on where you live, is obviously a challenge for many people as well. But we're strictly talking about an individual. And keep in mind, if there's a federal loan involved with this property and a mortgage on the property, those banks are required by federal law to require that consumer keep flood insurance in play on that property. So a consumer is, in many places, they're stuck now because they're faced with the idea of having to come up with $7,000, $8,000 a year that they shall pay to keep the flood insurance in order to keep their mortgage in effect and going forward. It's not just a Louisiana problem or even just a Gulf Coast problem. This is going to affect a huge majority of the United States. Whether you live in the Gulf Coast or the East Coast region, it's also going to affect many areas around all the river systems inside the United States of America. And it's kind of a two-edged sword. What you're seeing is the effects of the implementation of Biggert-Waters combined with FEMA having to go out across the country and remap all of the flood mappings in all of the counties and, of course, parishes in Louisiana, which both of those things coming together is creating what we call a perfect storm that is creating havoc on this market in terms of consumers being able to afford their premiums on flood insurance. All the flood maps have not been completed yet in terms of finalized through that process that FEMA goes through with the local area governments to ensure that there's appeals process and everyone has a chance to be able to look at those and so forth. So there are a lot of unanswered questions that we're trying to get from FEMA as well, to be able to help us better understand, to articulate the facts on how many properties are we talking about. But this is going to affect an individual trying to sell that piece of property, and also a potential buyer that is looking to buy that piece of property. And because if a buyer goes and realizes that their flood insurance premium now is going to cost them $8,000, $10,000 when it's costing that seller right now $800, pretty much that house would be deemed unsellable. I will tell you, our Louisiana delegation, they understand the need to have this law delayed until we can figure out a better solution to the fix, to create more affordable flood insurance rates for all citizens. So our delegation has worked tirelessly to try to implement amendments to bills to delay the act for a year, to delay it for 4 years, and until we can figure this out. So I think our goal now is to spread the coalition out so that we can get the word out to these other states, and particularly their congresspeople in those states, to let them know that just because your state doesn't have this problem today, it's going to be knocking at your door tomorrow or even next year. And we all need to come together to fix this problem for the consumers of the country that are required to purchase the flood insurance policies.